Have you ever had this situation, is there a doctor here?
Yeah.
On a plane?
Yeah, I heard it on a plane. And then the air hostess comes in, it's like, do you need us to land the plane?
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Kiran. I'm a junior doctor and a comedian working in Manchester. Today I am joined by Sanchit, who is one half of the channel Scanning the Mind. Yeah, and we cut you off again every time. It's a tradition now.
Right, I'm used to it.
We recently did a video where we reacted to an episode of Scrubs and compared it to our first day as doctors. Yeah. And you guys seemed to enjoy it and asked us to look at some more episodes. So today, someone commented about an episode called My Lunch. So we're going to be reacting to that episode and comparing it to real life as a doctor. Let's get into it.
It was time for my new daily ritual, asking Dr. Cox to lunch. Hey, Dr. Cox, what are you doing for lunch?
Not having it with you, Paula.
Oh, good luck eating. This is every spoon from the cafeteria. And guess what? Today just happens to be soup and frozen yogurt day.
Do you go to lunch with your colleagues in the hospital?
Not senior colleagues, no. Especially on psychiatry, we don't really hang out with the senior colleagues that much. Even on like medical jobs, I don't think I ever went to lunch with the consultants unless they offered.
Yeah.
Unless they offered to be like, oh guys, do you want to all come for lunch? And then we'd all awkwardly go with them.
Yeah, and then there's that awkward moment because sometimes they pay for the lunch,
Yeah.
sometimes they don't. If you're going for coffee, I think the consultants tend to
Yeah.
pay for it all
Yeah.
the time. And that's the best. That is the one when you're
That free
consultant.
coffee, ooh.
Yeah.
Always tastes better.
Some doctors like to change into their streets when they go out for lunch. Not me. I like how the world reacts to me as a doctor.
Here, you can't go out in your scrubs, can you? Technically,
No.
you shouldn't wear them out the hospital.
No, and I was actually thinking that because you get told off. I was about to say I've been told off a few times and I have, but you get told off if you ever
Yeah.
walk in and out of the hospital with scrubs on.
Technically, you're meant to go to work, get
Yeah.
changed, have your day at work,
Yeah.
get changed again, and then go home.
But these queues kind of remind me at the start of the COVID pandemic when there was those massive queues outside
Yeah.
supermarkets. But if you were an NHS worker at the time, you could go to the front of the queue.
Yeah, it was really awkward though. Did you ever do it?
Of course I did.
Oh, I couldn't. It was too awkward.
It was incredibly awkward.
Yeah.
Jill Tracy was a former patient who had once tried to kill herself. Sad, yes, but this did not change the fact that she was unbelievably annoying.
I like that that's his internal monologue,
Yeah.
isn't it? Because it is sometimes your internal monologue,
Yeah.
but it's the kind of thing that you can never say.
Yeah, it just stays in your mind. Like, you can find patients annoying. There's nothing wrong in that. It's just you can't let it affect your work.
And obviously this is a mental health patient, which
Yeah, I am a psychiatry trainee, so this is my forte, really.
that's why we brought Sanchit along on this journey.
We had 3 separate patients waiting for transplants, and we were doing everything we could to keep them alive while we could locate donors.
Alrighty, Barbie, go check on Mrs. Sykes' ammonia levels. She's encephalopathic. Gandhi, review Denison's chart and get me a consent. Bobo, get on the horn to your cronies at local hospitals and get me a donor update.
It doesn't really happen as acutely as this though,
No.
like the transplant sort of thing.
No.
Like there's people on lists for transplants for years often.
Yeah.
And it seems a bit artificial that there will be 3
Yeah.
in one A&E department in one go.
And the medical director can't just call up his mates to be like, oh, do you have a transplant for me? Do you have an organ for me? That doesn't
Unless
work that
that's
way.
how it works in America, I don't know.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe there's
Not
some
sure.
underhand stuff going on there. But in the UK, you get put on the transplant register if you're eligible, and there's a list of priorities.
Yeah.
And you could be called at any time.
JD?
Hey, Jill?
It's funny how this patient knows him by his nickname, or by his first name.
Yeah, actually, I didn't realise that.
Do you ever do that in psychiatry?
No, I wouldn't tell someone my nickname.
No, but
I'd be like-
do you give them your first name?
Yeah, I'm just
Do
my
you?
first name, yeah.
Do
I would
you?
never say Dr. Kapoor.
I don't know if you lose that respect. If someone's calling by your first name,
Yeah.
if they're not taking your advice seriously,
Yeah.
if they're calling you by your first
So I
name,
think-
that's the thing I worry about.
For psych SHOs, so that's the level I am, a lot of the bigger decisions are made by the consultant, and the patients know that. They know the hierarchy of the doctors, and
Yeah.
they know that I'm only really there for the physical health side of things.
So you're basically, they know that you're friend, not foe.
Yeah, exactly.
You're on their side.
Keep them on side.
Buddying up. So if things go drastically wrong in the psychiatric hospital, you're going to be fine.
Exactly.
Hey, what'd you do last night? Turk made me watch Anaconda with him. Oh, is that the one with the giant snake?
No, this is the one with the giant snake.
I forgot how many penis jokes they make in Scrubs.
This is such a good example of things that couldn't be made nowadays.
No.
Like, I don't think this could be made again.
No.
With that character.
Dude, what the hell are you doing?
Having lunch. She follows me around like I'm her only friend in the world. It's pathetic.
Why is he hooked up to an IV?
This is lunch.
Dude, what the hell are you doing?
Having lunch.
I didn't clock that. I didn't clock that at all.
She was admitted a short time ago and she hasn't regained consciousness. Tox train's positive for cocaine. Do you think she could have OD'd?
She had been stood up on a couple dates, and she hadn't seen her shrink in a while.
Basically, they'd had some conversations before, and she told him some things.
Yeah.
That he thought maybe he could have acted on before, and now she's overdosed.
Starting to feel a little bit guilty that maybe they've dismissed her or not kind of taken her seriously because she's a bit annoying. With what he's seen and what he knows, I don't think you could go to the point to say that she's going to take an overdose or try and end her life. But it's something that you'd want to ask more questions about to find out how she's really thinking.
You can use her organs. Is there anything anyone could have done?
No. Unless you mean me.
That's really difficult, isn't it?
That's really difficult.
And that's a really sad scene. At the time, he obviously didn't know what was about to happen.
Yeah.
And he was very busy doing his job, and it was a casual encounter rather than like a full assessment.
It wasn't, she hadn't come to him for help. She hadn't come to him in a hospital setting where he would have kind of had his professional hat on. He was kind of out in the community doing his own thing and then seen her. So it's slightly different. And I think it is quite sad that obviously he's taking a lot of guilt on board about what's happened.
How's that new kidney feel, huh?
A little loose, but I'll get used to it.
So everyone got their organs.
Hey, thanks for everything, man.
That one woman. Also, he said it felt a little loose. Don't they usually leave the old kidney in and put the new kidney in kind of next to it?
Yes,
So
they do.
it's probably a bit tight, if anything.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, so that's an interesting fact if you didn't know it, is that when they do a kidney transplant, they like Sanchit said, they leave the kidney in and the new kidney will be above the old kidney normally, won't it? So if you examine a patient who's had a transplant, you can actually feel the old kidney that's still inside the body. The other thing is, although it's very convenient here that all of these patients have got their organs, the chances are this wouldn't have happened because you have to really thoroughly match everyone's blood and all of their antibodies to make sure there's not going to be any rejection of these organs and also of the blood.
Yeah, because it's kind of, you potentially are wasting an organ on someone which it doesn't have a high chance of succeeding, where someone else could have had it and potentially it'll work a bit more frequently.
Exactly. So everyone who has an organ transplant gets on immunosuppression, so medication for the rest of their lives that's going to suppress their immune system. But even before that point, you really match everything to try and reduce the chances of organ rejection, which, despite all of these things, can still happen.
Now, I'm sure we all recognize just how rare it is to get a win like this. Let me hear it, people. You are some kind of superhero.
You're a god.
You're a beautiful healer.
This was not a compliment.
It was a compliment to a doctor. You're a beautiful healer.
Any idiot could have seen that Jill was in trouble. I'm the reason she's dead. Then he said the words I never expected to hear.
Why don't you and I go grab some lunch? That'd be good. Come on.
I think that's one of the things I always loved about Scrubs, is that even though Dr. Cox is really harsh and really sarcastic, he always knows when JD needs him or when he needs some help or needs some support. And I think that's what makes it so much more real and their relationship so much better as well.
I saw her in that supermarket too, but I'm not torturing myself. Would you like to know why?
Why?
Because she didn't come to the hospital looking for help. We just randomly bumped into her out here in the world.
So that's an interesting point, isn't it? Outside in the public, doctors are still expected to help people.
But in emergencies, I guess. Because I always thought this about dermatologists. Like, if you're on the beach and you see patients' skin lesions, ethically, what are you meant to do? Are you meant to go up to them and say, you should probably get that checked out? Or do you just kind of leave them to it and not get involved?
Have you ever had this situation, is there a doctor here?
Yeah.
On a plane?
Yeah, I had it on a plane.
Have you?
Yeah, we were flying to Valencia and they announced, are there any doctors on the plane? And like a few people got up and went down.
What grade were you at this point?
I was doing my F3. And then like a few people went down. So I was like, and they looked a bit older. So I was like, there must be consultants or registrars. And like, obviously it's sort of like a Ryanair flight. So there's a tiny little aisle, like there's not that much room. And then a few people came back and I was like, oh, so like, what's going on? And the guy was like, oh, I'm not a doctor, I just want to know what's happening. I was like, oh my God, I've not gone because I thought you were a doctor. The air hostess came down and said, oh, are you the doctor? The nurse is calling you? So I was like, all right, fine. I go down and...
So, but basically, you were very reluctant, it sounds like.
I didn't want there to be there was a lot of people there.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Sometimes too many people makes things worse.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, there's already 3 or 4 people there.
Yeah.
And the chances of them being below me in experience are very low. So I get there And there was a doctor on the scene. Everyone else was kind of staff from the flight. So the doctor and the matron. The doctor was an F1. So he'd been working for 6 weeks at this point.
Yeah.
And he's the only one that responded because he was sat right there. And essentially this lady had a seizure. On Ryanair flights, I don't know about other flights, they have no equipment. Nothing. You can't even check like glucose, nothing.
Do they have any medications?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So she'd had a seizure and she was kind of post-ictal. So that's like the period after you've had a seizure where you're a bit out of it, you might be a bit confused, a bit drowsy, not quite fully conscious yet. And then the air hostess comes and it's like, do you need us to land the plane? I was like, what?
That's so much power to be like, we need to land this plane.
Yeah, and I was like, what do you mean? He was like, well, it's 3 hours until we get to Valencia, but we can land in Bordeaux in like 20 minutes. So you need to tell us right now, do you want to land the plane? And I was like, give me a minute, just let me think about it, because it seems like quite a big decision to say, we're landing the plane. Essentially, in the end, I did say, let's land it, because if she seized again and didn't stop seizing, so something called status epilepticus, we had nothing to treat her with.
So you did land the plane?
Yeah, so I landed the plane in Bordeaux.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
I did not know the story was going to go this way.
Yeah, so landed the plane, because like, if she seizes again, we're completely screwed, because we can't treat her with any, we'll just have to sit here and watch.
Do you know what that shows though? Is they need to have some sort of first aid kit.
Yeah.
It's fine to say, is there a doctor on board?
Yeah.
But what can the doctor do if you don't have any medications or any kit?
Yeah.
What, you can't heal someone with your hands.
Exactly, so I found out what was wrong, but apart from that, I couldn't do anything.
Once you start blaming yourself for deaths that aren't your fault, my friend, that's a slippery slope that you can't come back from. And trust me, I've seen it ruin a hell of a lot of good doctors, and I will not let it happen to you.
This whole thing is about trying to distance yourself from things, and it's easy to think, oh, there's more I could have done, we could have done this, we could have done that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, things that will happen will just end up happening.
Yeah. And I think in psychiatry, you see it a lot. You, as a consultant, or any doctor really, you will have patients that end up killing themselves at some point. Whether that's in the hospital, whether that's at home, or whatever. And if you've seen them, you're always going to replay back the encounters you've had with them, if there's anything else you could have done, if you could have told someone, if you'd said something slightly different, maybe something would have changed. And so it is quite important to always remind yourself that it's not your fault, and there may have been things you could have done, but at the end of the day, they still could have done it. It's their choice at the end of the day, and you've done what you can.
Everybody's failing. Mrs. Sykes is indicating peripheral neuropathy. My valve transplant patient suffering partial complex seizures.
The autopsy just came in on your donor, Jill Tracy. She didn't die of an overdose.
She died of rabies. Okay, people. All of our transplant patients are infected.
What just happened? She had rabies.
Where did that curveball come from?
They thought she was a cocaine overdose, and in actual fact, she was rabid.
I don't know how they got confused like that, and also how they didn't check it before they transplanted all her organs. It's like the big blood crisis. Do you remember that? So there was a big thing in the UK where lots of people got given blood that was infected with HIV and ended up contracting AIDS. And it's still ongoing now in terms of the backlash of what happened. And loads of people got AIDS because of it.
It's quite bad, really, isn't it?
Terrible.
There's loads more checks that go into place now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know how someone goes from she killed herself with cocaine to, oh, actually she had rabies.
We did all we could over the next few days to keep the transplant patients going, but odds were against us.
The way they depicted that was really interesting, because that's the way it happens in the hospital, is that someone passes away, then all of a sudden their bed is empty.
Yeah.
And you always remember that person that was in the bed. And then all of a sudden there's someone else in that bed.
Yeah.
And there's just this constant turnaround of people. And it just doesn't feel real.
You don't get time to kind of process what's happened before there's a load more work to do, or someone new's taken their place. And yeah, it can be difficult.
I was obsessed with getting those organs.
Right then I knew I was going to pull him out of this, but unfortunately sometimes the hospital picks a day we're just going to pile it on.
That's exactly what we were talking about, kind of, you're trying to process what's happened, it's been a really busy day, and then suddenly a pile of work just comes and hits you, and you just got to get on with it.
There's just no time to debrief after it, is there? He obviously made a decision at the time, and that decision has ended up harming people.
Yeah.
But at the time, would anyone have done any different?
Yeah.
That's the question. That's really sad, isn't it? Also, that's exactly what it looks like, because you've got all the wrappers
Yeah.
from everything that's been opened at the cardiac arrest, at the patient's foot.
It does seem like a mess, doesn't it, when you go to a cardiac arrest? There's just stuff everywhere.
Yeah. Cardiac arrests in the UK are slightly less dramatic than that, though.
Yeah.
In that we put pads on, and the pads do the shocking rather than
don't have
the guy with the things.
He wasn't about to die, was he, Louis?
This part of the video kept on getting a copyright claim because of the music in the background. So instead, I'm going to tell you what happened. Dr. Cox says that this guy could have waited for a second kidney and that he wasn't going to die. JD says if you stop blaming yourself for other people's deaths, there's no coming back from it. And Dr. Cox says, I know, before walking out of the room. Sometimes you just need to do that, don't you?
Get away from it all.
I didn't realise this was going to be such a sad episode.
Such a sad episode, isn't it? Who requested this? Why would you make this episode out of all of them?
It was a really emotional episode, so I hope you guys got to feel that as well, even though it's in clips.
Thanks for reminding me for that depressing episode of Scrubs.
As always, if you're new, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.